What if everything you know about existence is wrong? I mean, really wrong.
Yeah, like what if life itself isn't some kind of gift, but maybe the result of a cosmic accident? Or even a divine act of self-destruction?
Exactly. It's a heavy start, I know. But today we're diving deep into Philipp Mainländer. He was a 19th century German philosopher with ideas that are, well, startling, but also weirdly relevant today.
Mm-hmm. We've been looking through excerpts about his life, his core ideas.
And our mission really is to pull out the most compelling bits from his work, try to get our heads around his unique perspective and, see how it might make you think differently about life, death, meaning.
I don't know how getting bogged down in super dense philosophy speak. We'll try.
We'll definitely try.
Yeah.
So let's start with the man himself, Philipp Batz, born 1841, but he chose to rename himself Mainländer.
Yeah, the man from the Main River, his birthplace. And this wasn't just a whim, was it? It feels significant.
It really does. Like he was embedding his origin right into his identity. He said it foreshadows his whole philosophy, this idea of returning to a source.
I think so, yeah. It's like his personal choice mirrors the cosmic journey he talks about later, this idea that existence is sort of a departure from something original, and there's this underlying pull back towards it.
Okay, so it's more than just, I'm from here. It's almost a philosophical statement in itself.
Kind of sets the stage, you could say.
And what's also really striking is his background. He came from privilege, kind of
Comfortable background.
but he deliberately chose hardship. He actually wanted to join the military, not for patriotism or glory, but he wanted the humility of obedience, the experience of struggle.
Yeah, he literally said he wanted to be absolutely in all things submitted to another one once, to do the lowermost work, to have to obey blindly. It's quite something.
It really is. What drives someone to do that? To seek out adversity when comfort is right there?
Yeah.
Was it just him, or was there a philosophical reason behind it even then?
Well, it connects, I think, to how philosophy often develops from experience. His wanting to embrace difficulty, it sort of suggests he believed real understanding comes from facing hard stuff. And if you link that to his later philosophy, maybe this early rejection of an easy life was like a personal tryout for his bigger idea that existence itself is tension, a move away from a fundamental nothingness.
Interesting. Like he was living the tension he later wrote about.
Perhaps, yeah. It suggests a deep connection between how he lived and what he thought.
Okay, so that sets the scene for the man.
Oh.
Now, let's get into the work itself, because this is where things get really intense.
The philosophy of redemption. Die Philosophie der Erlösung.
He knew he was about to be conscripted into the army, and he basically went on this incredible writing sprint, wrote the whole thing in just 4 months.
4 months. It's astonishing. He called it an enchanting life, a spiritual blossoming full of bliss and blissful shivers, like a race against time.
Totally. And then, maybe even more incredibly, he insisted his birth name, Batz, be left off the publication. He wanted it to be just Philipp Mainländer. All about the ideas, not the person.
It really makes you pause, doesn't it? That level of dedication to the work itself above any personal recognition. Seriously, how many of us could pour everything into something like that, knowing the world might never connect it back to us?
It highlights this intense focus on the message. The message mattered more than the messenger, and that urgency, maybe it reflects how radical his ideas felt, even to him, like he had to get them out.
And radical they were. He took Schopenhauer, who was already pretty pessimistic with his will to live, causing all suffering.
Right, Schopenhauer was his starting point, in a way.
But Mainländer just completely flipped it. For him, the basic driving force of everything wasn't a will to live, it was the will to die.
Exactly, he flipped the script entirely. It's a huge departure.
So how does that work? Where does existence even come from in that view?
Okay, so this is the really mind-bending part. Mainländer proposed that the universe basically started when God, or a kind of primal unity, committed suicide.
Cosmic suicide.
Yeah. Imagine this initial state of pure being, this God. For reasons he explores, it chose to negate itself, to shatter into all the bits and pieces we see as the universe.
So that act, that self-annihilation, is the origin point, and it sets everything, the whole cosmos, on this trajectory back towards non-being.
Towards dissolution.
Exactly. But for him, that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. He saw it as a kind of redemption. Redemption through dissolution.
A lot to take in. He didn't pull any punches with the implications, did he? He actually said the will ignited by the knowledge that non-being is better than being is the supreme principle of morality.
Right. So morality itself gets redefined. It's about aligning with this fundamental cosmic drive towards non-existence.
So every atom, every little thing is basically yearning to get back to nothingness. That's the idea.
At the core of it, a universal longing for release.
Okay, but hang on. How does that square with, life?
Yeah.
Our own instinct to survive, to keep going.
Mhm.
Is he saying our life force is just temporary? Like fighting against this bigger cosmic urge?
That's a really key question. It seems he viewed that life force, that individual will to live, as part of the fragmentation process initiated by God's self-destruction. It's a temporary manifestation, a localized resistance, maybe. But ultimately, it's caught up in the larger current, pulling everything back towards dissolution. So our drive for survival is real, but it's ultimately secondary to this deeper universal will to die. It's a complete reversal of how we usually think about ethics and purpose.
Yeah, no kidding. Prioritizing non-being over being is the ultimate good.
It's radical stuff.
Unsurprisingly, people didn't exactly welcome this with open arms back then.
Not really, no. Accusations flew, nihilism, glorifying death, that sort of thing. It was shocking.
But you can't just dismiss him, right? He has a place in philosophy. His critique of Schopenhauer was important.
Absolutely. And despite the controversy, his ideas did resonate, especially with later thinkers who were grappling with similar issues: suffering, meaning, what do you do in a world maybe without God? Thinkers like Nietzsche, Cioran, even Camus, they wrestled with his ghost in a way.
So even if his conclusions were dark, the questions he raised were powerful.
Exactly. Sometimes the most, let's say, pessimistic philosophies spark the most intense thinking and creativity. He forced people to confront these really fundamental questions about being and non-being, and that conversation kept going.
Which brings us to the very difficult end of his own story. Just after his book was published, he was only 34. He took his own life.
Yes. That fact hangs over any discussion of his work, inevitably.
And it leads to such difficult interpretations. Was this the ultimate, maybe logical endpoint of his own philosophy? Living out the will to die?
Some argue precisely that it was an act of philosophical integrity, the ultimate consistency.
Or was it something separate? A personal tragedy, maybe driven by the immense weight of the ideas he was grappling with, but not necessarily a philosophical statement.
It's impossible to know for sure, isn't it? Was it the philosopher enacting his theory? Or was it the man succumbing to despair? It's a really complex intersection of life and ideas. We can speculate, but...
Right. But the source material we looked at suggested another way to frame it. Not just despair, but maybe a challenge.
A challenge? How so?
Like his story is a kind of dare. A dare to look right into the darkest possibilities of existence and not just flinch away, but to, emerge changed. Maybe not okay, but transformed.
That's an interesting perspective.
It makes you ask, what if real courage isn't ignoring the void, but facing it, looking right at it, and still choosing to do things, to create, to love, to find meaning, even if you believe the whole universe is heading towards dissolution anyway?
So the act of confronting the darkness itself becomes valuable, maybe even inspiring, regardless of the conclusions reached.
Yeah, something like that. His willingness to just go there, to ask those terrifying questions, maybe that's inspirational in itself. It shows this incredible intellectual honesty, refusing to look away from uncomfortable truths.
And that kind of confrontation, even if the philosophy itself seems bleak, can actually fuel creativity and resilience, paradoxically.
So if we try to boil this down, what's the big takeaway from our deep dive into Mainländer?
Well, for me, it might be about how we measure a life.
Well,
maybe it's less about comfort and ease and more about the willingness to face the tough stuff, the adversity, to keep searching for truth, even when it's difficult, and crucially, to create meaning where none is just handed to you.
I like that. Finding meaning because it isn't given, not despite it. And even in this philosophy that seems so dark on the surface, there's maybe an unexpected spark there, a call to live authentically precisely because existence is so precarious.
It forces you to consider what really matters if the ultimate backdrop is, well, what he suggested it was.
Which brings us right back to that opening question, doesn't it? What if everything you know about existence is wrong? What if life is the result of that cosmic accident, that divine self-destruction?
Yeah, it hangs there. And it leads to a crucial question for you listening right now.
Right. Will you turn away from that kind of darkness the kind Mainländer stared into?
Or will you maybe let it teach you something? Something about existence, and maybe even about your own ability to create light, to create meaning within it.
It's a challenge, for sure. So maybe the final thought is, take up your own struggle. Whatever adversity life throws at you, try to turn it into wisdom.
Let your life be a testament, perhaps, to the power of facing that void and still choosing again and again to make something meaningful.